Hello everyone and welcome to our module on fructose and galactose. The main monosaccharide used in metabolism, as you know, is glucose, but there are two other monosaccharides that can also be metabolized by the body, and those are fructose and galactose. And both of these are isomers of glucose. They have the same chemical formula as glucose, C6H12O6, but the molecules are arranged around the carbon skeleton in a different manner. All carbohydrates we ingest when we eat are broken down into glucose, galactose, and fructose, and then glucose and galactose are taken up by the transporter SGLT1 in a sodium-dependent way. We'll see that in a minute. Fructose, on the other hand, is taken up by facilitated diffusion by a transporter called GLUT5, and then they all leave the enterocytes after they've been taken out of the intestine by a transporter called GLUT2. So here's a depiction of carbohydrate GI absorption. In the GI lumen, you have monosaccharides coming from the diet. The SGLT transporter will absorb glucose and galactose into enterocytes along with sodium. And there is a sodium ATP pump keeping the sodium level high out here so that it can be absorbed with glucose and galactose. Fructose, on the other hand, is absorbed by the GLUT5 transporter. And then all three monosaccharides go at the back of the cell into the interstitium in blood via the GLUT2 transporter. So we'll start by talking about fructose. The major source of fructose in Western diets is the disaccharide sucrose, which is table sugar. Sucrose is made up of a molecule of glucose plus a molecule of fructose linked together. It is a disaccharide, and that disaccharide is split in the intestine, and the fructose is released and can be absorbed by the GI tract. On the screen, I've shown you the initial reactions of glycolysis, and as we will discuss in this module, fructose can be metabolized and feed into the pathway of glycolysis so it can be used to create energy. On this slide, I've zoomed in on the metabolism of fructose. So recall that dihydroxyacetone phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate are intermediates of the glycolysis pathway. So once fructose has been converted to one of these two molecules, it can enter glycolysis. The way this is done is by starting with an enzyme called fructokinase in the liver. Fructokinase adds a phosphate to the one carbon of fructose to make fructose 1-phosphate, and the source of that phosphate group is a molecule of ATP. Once fructose 1-phosphate has been synthesized, there is an enzyme called aldolase B, which can split the 6-carbon fructose molecule into two 3-carbon molecules. One of those molecules is dihydroxyacetone phosphate, which can enter glycolysis. The other molecule is called glyceraldehyde, and there is a third enzyme called triokinase, which can convert the glyceraldehyde into glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. So in this manner, the 6-carbon structure of fructose is converted to two 3-carbon structures of the glycolysis pathway, and now it can enter metabolism as you know it from glucose. A couple of special points about the metabolism of fructose. This step right here in glycolysis, the conversion of fructose 6-phosphate to 1,6-bisphosphate, is the rate-limiting step of glycolysis. It's catalyzed by the enzyme phosphofructokinase 1. Note that fructose enters the glycolytic pathway beyond this point. This means that the metabolism of fructose is going to be very rapid, faster than either glucose or galactose. Both glucose and galactose enter this pathway up here. They have to get through this rate-limiting step, which is a bottleneck, and thus their metabolism is slower than fructose on a relative basis. Another special point has to do with the first step of glycolysis. The conversion of glucose to glucose 6-phosphate is catalyzed by the enzyme hexokinase. It turns out that this enzyme can metabolize a very small amount of fructose. As I've shown here, fructose can be converted to fructose 6-phosphate by hexokinase. Normally, this contribution to fructose metabolism is very small, but in patients who are deficient in some of the fructose metabolism enzymes, this pathway can become more important, and it's a way for some fructose to get into the glycolytic pathway. There are two disorders of fructose metabolism that you should be aware of for step 1 of your boards, and the first disorder is called essential fructosuria, and this is a deficiency of the fructokinase enzyme. Going back a couple of slides, recall that fructokinase is found in the liver, and it catalyzes the first step of fructose metabolism, conversion of fructose to fructose 1-phosphate. So if this enzyme is missing, you won't be able to metabolize fructose, and it will circulate in your blood and spill out in your urine and get excreted in the urine. This is a benign condition. Fructose will not be taken up by the liver cells, as I said before, and the only abnormality is that fructose will appear in the urine depending on how much you take in, and that's why it's called essential fructosuria. A more serious disorder is hereditary fructose intolerance. This is a deficiency of the second enzyme of fructose metabolism, aldolase B. When you are deficient in this enzyme, you will build up levels of fructose 1-phosphate inside of your liver, and this will deplete ATP in the liver. Going back a couple of slides, in hereditary fructose intolerance, the problem is that aldolase B is dysfunctional. As a result, the liver takes up fructose and converts it to fructose 1-phosphate, but the fructose 1-phosphate cannot be metabolized any further. As a result, much of the ATP inside of liver cells gets tied up in the form of fructose 1-phosphate, and there is not enough ATP left around for the liver to perform its other functions like gluconeogenesis. Here's how the clinical features of hereditary fructose intolerance develop. First of all, you have a buildup in hepatocytes of the metabolite fructose 1-phosphate. This leads to a depletion in the pool of available ATP because all the phosphate is bound up in fructose 1-phosphate. With less ATP available, gluconeogenesis cannot be performed normally, and as a result, affected children can develop hypoglycemia and vomiting, especially after meals where they consume fructose. In addition, the rate of glycogen breakdown will decrease. You don't need ATP for glycogen breakdown, but you do need phosphate. So once again, when all the phosphate is tied up in fructose 1-phosphate, glycogen breakdown does not occur. As a result, glycogen builds up and hepatomegaly develops, and over time that can lead to liver failure. So the classic presentation of this condition to know for your boards is a baby who was just weaned from breast milk. There's no fructose in breast milk, but when babies wean, they begin consuming regular food like the rest of us, and that often contains fructose. The baby will present with failure to thrive. There will often be symptoms after feeding. This is because the baby is getting hypoglycemic after feeding because all of the ATP inside of the liver is tied up in fructose 1-phosphate. You may even see seizures from the low blood sugar level. There's often an enlarged liver, and you'll almost never see this in actual clinical practice because newborns are always screened for this condition so that if it's present, the baby can be treated before they develop any symptoms. The treatment is to avoid fructose, obviously, and also sucrose, which contains fructose. And then finally, they need to avoid sorbitol. So let's talk about why that's the case. If a baby with fructose intolerance consumes sorbitol, sorbitol can be metabolized into fructose by a pathway in the body called the polyol pathway. And this is why sorbitol is bad for babies with fructose intolerance. The polyol pathway is an alternative pathway for metabolizing glucose. You're probably aware that most glucose in the body is metabolized by glycolysis, but there is a lesser alternative pathway called the polyol pathway used by some cells in the body, and it can convert glucose into fructose. It can also convert sorbitol into fructose, and that's why sorbitol is bad for babies with fructose intolerance. And in the endocrinology section in the videos on diabetes, I talk a lot more about the polyol pathway. That's because in diabetics who have high glucose levels, sorbitol can build up via the polyol pathway, and that's responsible for some of the complications of diabetes. Now let's move away from fructose and talk about galactose. Galactose is commonly found in lactose, which you may know is milk sugar, and the main source of galactose in Western diets is milk and milk products. Lactose is a disaccharide. It's a molecule of glucose linked to a molecule of galactose, and these are split in the intestine, and the galactose is absorbed in the manner we described before. The way galactose is metabolized is by converting the molecule into galactose 1-phosphate and then glucose 1-phosphate. And you may remember that glucose 1-phosphate is an intermediate in the pathway towards glycogen synthesis. So this molecule can be used for glycogen synthesis, or it can be converted to glucose 6-phosphate, which is an intermediate of glycolysis. So this molecule can then enter glycolysis or become part of gluconeogenesis and go back towards glucose. On this slide, I've zoomed in on the metabolism of galactose. The first step is conversion of galactose to galactose 1-phosphate using the enzyme galactokinase. This enzyme uses ATP as a source of phosphate to create the molecule of galactose 1-phosphate. The next step involves the enzyme galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase, or GALT. This uses a molecule of UDP glucose, which you may recall is an intermediate in glycogen synthesis and breakdown. The molecule of UDP glucose is used to create a molecule of glucose 1-phosphate. Just like in fructose metabolism, there are two disorders of galactose metabolism that you should know for step one. The first one is called classic galactosemia. This is a deficiency of galactose 1-phosphate uridyl transferase, the GALT enzyme. It's an autosomal recessive disorder, and as a result of deficiency of this enzyme, galactose 1-phosphate accumulates in cells, and it also leads to accumulation of a substance called galactitol that we'll talk about in a second. Going back one slide, this is the GALT enzyme that's deficient in classic galactosemia. As a result, galactose 1-phosphate builds up in the liver and leads to liver damage. Just like in fructose disorders, this depletes the phosphate supply inside of liver cells and limits the liver's ability to perform gluconeogenesis and glycogen breakdown. The other problem in classic galactosemia has to do with the buildup of galactitol, and this involves the polyol pathway we talked about in regards to diabetes and fructose metabolism. The enzyme aldose reductase, which converts glucose to sorbitol, can also convert galactose to galactitol. So when galactose levels get high in galactosemia, you can have a buildup of galactitol in the lens of the eye, and that can cause cataracts, just like sorbitol can cause cataracts in diabetics. So the main problems in classic galactosemia are going to relate to cataract formation in children and liver dysfunction. This will present in infancy, usually in the first few days of life, shortly after the baby starts to consume milk, because remember, milk is the major source of galactose. The liver will accumulate galactose and galactitol, and there will be liver failure and jaundice and hepatomegaly and failure to thrive. And if the condition is untreated, cataracts will develop. And cataracts in children is very rare. And if you see this, one of the things you should think about is classic galactosemia. Clinically, you are very unlikely to ever see this condition, and that's because there is a GALT enzyme activity assay which is performed on newborn babies for screening. Screening is mandated in most parts of the United States so that these babies are recognized immediately and that they are treated. And the treatment is to avoid galactose, and that means no milk for babies born with this problem. The second disorder of galactose metabolism is a galactokinase deficiency, and this is a much milder form of elevated levels of galactose in the blood. If we go back a few slides, this is where galactokinase works. So if this is dysfunctional, galactose will not be converted to galactose 1-phosphate. This means galactose levels will become elevated in the blood, but the galactose will not be phosphorylated and trapped in the liver, and the liver will not be depleted of phosphate. This means you won't see the liver problems we talked about in classic galactosemia, but you will see high levels of galactose in the blood, and this can be converted to galactitol and lead to cataracts. So I've summarized those points on this slide. Galactose is not taken up by cells, but it accumulates in the blood and in the urine. And the main problem is cataracts in children and young adults. It's very unusual for children or young adults to develop cataracts, and a galactokinase deficiency is one of the reasons this can occur. And this may present, especially in a young child, as vision problems, and then you may find cataracts on physical exam. And that concludes our module on fructose and galactose.